So now I am very, very pleased and grateful again to Prudential Financial, our sponsor for this segment that is coming up now. I want to welcome a Latina leader in media. She's a very well-known Latina journalist, correspondent. I want to make sure that I say all the right thing, reporter, anchor, and one of the most popular reporters in Despierta América, Univisión 41, and host in Spanish language TV. Please welcome Damaris Diaz. Ah, there you are.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be a part of this.
Yes. And Damaris, this is an incredible opportunity for us, not only to meet you personally, obviously, or meet you, but also bring your voice to our audience and talk a little bit more about the other side of the equation of the pandemic. We talk about businesses and how businesses recover and how they need to do their homework, right? But we also know that the pandemic has had a very terrible hit or effect, mental effect in many of us, not only Latinos, but mostly a lot of our Latino essential workers have suffered. And I want to introduce just briefly. You were born in La Vega, right? Dominican Republic. You moved to New York with your family first, and then you settled in New Jersey. Yay, New Jersey girl.
That's right.
And so you graduated from Seton Hall, and it's a very, very good university here in New Jersey. And you focused on communications and criminal justice, correct?
That's right. That's right.
So I'm not surprised that you have been covering stories of people that you care about and serving the community, right? And as we know you have been covering this. I would like to ask you, what lessons have we learned from the pandemic? This unexpected devastation. I know you have been covering a lot of personal stories of family, emotional or financial distress.
That's right, Susana. It's been a whirlwind since this pandemic started. We didn't expect what we faced, right? So many of us have been affected on so many levels, and for the people, I have friends that say to me, "Oh wow, I haven't gotten COVID, and my family's all okay," and I'm like, "Wow, God bless you." That's not my story. My story early on, my cousin's parents both fell ill in the hospital here in a local hospital in New Jersey, just 2 days apart. Ambulance came for the mom, ambulance came for the dad the next day. Within a week, my cousin's mom passed away, alone in a hospital, intubated. She wasn't even conscious of what was happening. The last memory she had was probably being intubated in the hospital and being rushed to the emergency room. And, nobody was prepared for that. Nobody was prepared for a loss in the middle of a pandemic where you can't even congregate with your family and be there for them and hold their hand and be a part of their pain. And, fortunately, my cousin's dad did make it. He's still very delicate, but he's home and he's under a lot of care. And it was like one thing after another in our family. My other aunt in New York was in a hospital, also intubated. And when she seemed to be getting better, she passed. And within months, another uncle passed, also in New York City, due to COVID. He couldn't breathe, and in his sleep, he just went in his sleep. And we all know the same way we're born, eventually someday we're going to die. But to kind of have to face this in the middle of a crisis where we don't even know, like, is there a cure? What's the medication? What's going to happen with our families? And then you start seeing these stories. People kept saying to me, well, maybe they had underlying conditions. Well, how about the dozens of stories that we read on a daily basis of young people in their 20s, children, of all ages. And so we, living with this fear, not knowing at what point am I going to get it? And how is my system going to react to it? I think that the lesson we learned so many lessons, but one of the biggest lessons learned here is you've got to be prepared. How do you prepare for this kind of thing? We kind of go through life on a day-to-day thinking, okay, I need to prepare for today. What's my assignment for today? I'm going to call and get a permit release, and I'm going to get my cameraman lined up, and I'm going to get my editor ready, and we're going to do this. But we're preparing for the now. But there's tomorrow and the day after that and the week after that and the month after that, and there's so many things that we don't think about that this pandemic has put like in our faces. Hit us on the forehead like, hey, wake up. Are you ready for this? Nobody was ready for this, and people have to, we're like reinventing the wheel every day as we go along, trying to figure out our lives in the middle of this health crisis that's just not here in the US, but it's in the entire world.
Correct. Yes. And one thing that you mentioned was really very, very powerful. The inability to be there for your losses, for the people who are passing. I know personally friends who lost their parents, and like you said, they were not able to even say the goodbyes, and they were not able to be there to rituals are important in any society, and this pandemic put us totally on hold for those very traditional rituals that help us cope with the losses. So what stories have you been covering on your program, for instance?
So one of the first stories that I covered that really hit hard for me and for so many viewers was a nurse in New York City. She works as a nurse. And so, a lot of our first responders were the first ones to get COVID because they had to work there without masks, without, the gloves, without all the safety precautions because the hospitals weren't prepared. And so she got COVID. She had to isolate herself. Her kids were sent somewhere else. Her mom would leave her food along with other relatives at her doorstep. And she's thinking, oh my God, she's thinking the worst. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my mom if she gets it? What's going to happen to my children? When can I see them? So when she finally got cleared to go back to work, she'd drive across. She lives in Jersey. She'd drive across the George Washington Bridge. And she said it was like this magnetic pull, just trying to pull her back to New Jersey, like, go home, don't do this. And she said, she kept thinking, I have a duty. I have to do this. So she said, oh God, just help me get past the bridge. Once I get past the bridge, maybe when I get to the parking facility, maybe I'll have the courage to go. So she'd park in her car and cry. She'd walk to the hospital and she'd still feel that magnetic pull saying to her, don't do this, go home and just be with your family because the world as we know it has changed and our lives could end tomorrow. And that's when she heard the applauses. Her shift started when the applauses began every night around 7 p.m. And she says those applauses were the ones that got her through those doors, got her to her post and helping people day after day. But she said she'd cry every single day she drove to work. And, now it's almost a year later and she's still working as a nurse and she probably still feels conflicted, but she's got a duty, and so to tell that story, I think that when I got into journalism, I thought, I just want to tell happy stories. There's so many things that are happening in the world that are going to make us sad, that are going to make us feel crushed. I want to tell happy stories. And I've been very fortunate to travel the world, to interview celebrities at movie sets, sports figures, artists on red carpets. I've had the blessing and the luck to do that. But, the reality is, that's not everything. We suffer through sadness. We suffer through loss. We suffer through pain. And there are a lot of stories out there to be told, of very strong women that have a voice and deserve for their stories to be told. So for me, that was such an honor to be able to tell her story, even though it broke my heart. And even though my voice was cracking as I was interviewing her, as a Latina, you're raised to be strong. Like, don't shed a tear. And if you shed a tear, don't let anyone see you. And so, it's like, wow, this pandemic has taken a couple layers off of me, off of the way I've allowed the world to see me.
Yes, you make a very, very good point. I mean, there are part of our populations, some industries or some workers that have suffered this directly. The essential workers, the nurses, the doctors, the teachers who said, I know one of our board members is a teacher, and she said, I have underlying conditions, but I still gonna have to go to work. I am gonna go to work because it's my duty to my children and to families, because they trust on the school to leave the kids so they can go to work. It has been tremendously challenging for all families, and especially for women, like someone said in the past panel. So, what are the good stories? Because also the pandemic has brought, some fantastic ways that it has transformed our lives for good. What do you think they are? Those.
Oh, wow. Telling good stories is something that I could do with my eyes closed because it just makes me feel good. And I know that that's the effect that we have on people when we tell these stories. So recently I interviewed una dominicana de Nueva York who started her own business before the pandemic. She learned how to make these beautiful balloon arrangements. And she said, you know what, we need to celebrate everything. It's not just a birthday or Mother's Day. Let's celebrate everything. Let's make people happy. So she learned how to make these balloons. She started to make them, and deliver them. And she said, I was bringing joy to people. And then the pandemic happened. And it was like we weren't allowed to be happy because everything had to be canceled. Celebrations were canceled. We couldn't even have a barbecue and get together with our family. I mean, when you look at reports now, the governor the governor of New York is saying, well, maybe by July 4th, we can get together with our families and have a normal barbecue. Oh my God, a year and a half later. And so for her, she said, I wanted to bring happiness to the world and I couldn't. So she started to do these courses online to help people to learn how to make them. And she'd send them all the links. You need to buy these supplies and these are the cheapest ones. And I'm going to give you a whole how to right here, right now, virtually. And she said, it's so important to continue to celebrate our children, especially kids that are now being homeschooled, that who knows how their futures are going to look with this experience. This is a traumatic experience for so many children. Forget the fact that, I can't hang out with my friends and I can't do my extracurricular activities. But a lot of them had to see their grandparents die, their loss of their parents, loss of the other relatives, loss of friends. And so, their lives are being formed right now. And this woman said, it's so important to celebrate them. So I wanted to teach parents how to make these beautiful balloon arrangements. And so her business went from starting out to nothing to now online to now helping other people. And she says, and hopefully at the end of all this, these are people that now have a side gig that they can start making balloons, for other events and other families. And so, there are so many beautiful stories to be told. Yesterday, Despierta America Live, we were at a vaccination center in the Yankee Stadium. It's open 24/7, right? So you would think the line would wrap around the entire block, considering we've been anxiously waiting for this vaccine. But what's happening? Our Latinos, our African-American brothers and sisters are having so much trouble having access to the vaccine. First of all, you go online and it sends you from one thing to the other, and you can't figure it out. And you think you have an appointment just to be evaluated to see if you can get the vaccine. And you never even had an appointment for that. And so there's layers upon layers, and it's so hard for our people to navigate through them. And there's this woman in Pennsylvania, her name is Vivi, and online, she started to help people access the vaccine. So if I called her and said, listen, girl, I can't figure this out. My mom needs the vaccine. I know I'm not a priority right now, but she will go online, help you, walk you through the steps. And the next phone call you get from her, the next email you get from her is, hey, your appointment for your vaccination is on Tuesday, April, whatever, she's doing this on her free time. This is an entrepreneur. Her little business is suffering. She's a mother of two. She's homeschooling her two daughters. She's got a husband. She's got to take care of her family and her life. And she's taking all of her free time to help people that need this service. And so, she's like, my emails are blowing up. My social media is blowing up. We put this story out there yesterday, live on Despierta America. And she's like, it's such an honor to be able to help people. And she's like, I'm building a team because I obviously can't do this all by myself. So she's got another 4 people that are helping her out now to help other people, because we are all desperate to say goodbye to this COVID-19 and to get back to normal, for our economy to start building up again, for our schools to open up again, for us to be able to go to a restaurant and enjoy someone's company and know I can laugh right here in front of you and we're not going to give COVID to each other. It's like we're working effortlessly as a team to help people we don't even know, because we want to survive. We want to come out of this, in a successful way and alive and healthy.
So that is a fantastic story. I mean, those two are fantastic stories. I love them, and how people are so I think Latinas particularly are so innovative, and they come up with this really good ideas. However, I have to say that our community has been hit really, really hard in so many other aspects, already in a very uneven playing field before the pandemic. Our businesses have suffered the most. Our essential workers have suffered the most. And we know that part of that is because many of us, we are not really prepared for some kind of challenges or obstacles. It is a little bit part of our culture. We are, we come from countries that we trust in our, children to take care of us when we get old, that kind of thing, and everybody lives in the same home. But when you come to this country, you learn that there are other ways to take care of yourself. I would never live with my children ever again. That I know. And they're wonderful people, but they're their own people, they're grown-ups now. They have their own lives. So Prudential is a very traditional company that supports the financial stability of millions of families here in the United States. So what makes you believe that a company like Prudential can lessen these effects of the devastation of Latino families, especially, those that worry about their finances and they don't know if they're going to make it to the end of the pandemic?
Well, you know what? Prudential, first of all, speaks our language. So whether you're bilingual or you're not bilingual, Prudential speaks our language. So they're there to help us, and they are experts in this field. I mean, they've been around since 1875, before you and I were ever on this planet. And it's the largest insurance carrier in the United States. So they are the go-to place. They've done a lot of research to help us understand how we can prepare as citizens, as Americans, as people every day. They understand our community, right? Our values, and they know what matters. Like you said, culturally, as we get older, we're thinking our kids are going to take care of us, right? I'm not thinking that, because my son is like, Mom, I'm never leaving. You're going to take care of me. But my mom still has that hope, right? She still has that hope that my sister, my brother, and I are going to care for her in her older years, because that's what she was taught. And that's what my grandparents, believed. My grandfather was taken care of by all of his children, 7 children, and all of the grandchildren and great-grandchildren until the day he passed about a year and a half ago. We were by his bedside. And before that, he in hospice every single day. My aunt was there taking care of him 24/7. One of the bedrooms in her home was turned into pretty much a hospital room to take care of my grandfather. Fortunately, she had the setup to do that. I'm a working person. So God forbid my mom got sick tomorrow and she needed to be bedbound and take care of her. How am I going to financially sustain myself, my son, and my family if I have to take care of my mom? That's a full-time job, and not a full-time job like a 40-hour, full-time gig that we would have 24/7. And so, you know what? We need to plan financially for those situations. And those are conversations that we don't want to have, especially, as a younger person. It's like, I'm not going to think about that. I have my whole life ahead of me. Really? Something could happen to me tomorrow and I could be bedbound, God forbid. Tomorrow is now. Like, we have to plan now. And so that's when a company like Prudential steps in. They understand us. They understand our background. Maybe, when I was growing up here in the United States, I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I came here as a small child and started kindergarten, and trying to explain to my mom, like, what do you mean I can't do this? My friends can do it. What do you mean I can have a boyfriend? I'm like 15. Like, what do you mean? My American friends have had 2 boyfriends, and it's like, culturally, we are so different and so divided. But, an institution, and I call it an institution because that's what it is. Prudential understands that we have different stories. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. And so when you speak to one of the experts at Prudential, they come knowing what our struggles are. For example, my mom the other day went to get some tests done, and she's like, "Oh my God, I ran into fulanita y fulanito, and I can't believe that they were at the doctor's office all alone. They're elderly, like they're a couple that's a lot older than my mom is, and they are friends, dear friends of the family for years." I said, "Mom, why don't you applaud them that they were able to go by themselves?" She goes, "No, their kids should be doing this for them." She was appalled, and that ruined her day for the entire day, right? But that's just because this is our cultural background. And so to have a company like Prudential be able to speak to us, in terms that we understand, and to be understanding of it, and to be sympathetic of it, and not just be like, well, you can't, they're not going to say to you, well, your kids are not going to take care of you because they have their own lives. They understand that we speak a different language. It's not just that que hablamos español. We speak a whole different cultural language. And so, one of the things, like, when my father passed, he was 61 years old, and he passed of a heart attack years ago. That was like the eye opener for me. I would have never thought about life insurance until that happened. Luckily my father had life insurance, but I remember growing up and hearing them talking about that. And I used to think, these people are crazy. They're planning their death. Like, they're buying life insurance. Like, are they gonna, do they have a plan, like, to depart this planet and we don't even know it? But, that's just the ignorance, in a person like myself at that age, where I didn't want to think about tomorrow. We have to think about tomorrow. We need to have, like, emergency savings, and not just for a month or 2 months, as hard as that, may seem. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out, how am I going to have savings for the next 6 months in my bank account in case something happens in the middle of this crisis. The crisis happened, and what happened? All of my work got canceled or postponed. I had to collect unemployment. And it's a good thing that I had some system in place, but a lot of people didn't. A lot of people still don't.
Right.
52% of Latinos do not have emergency savings, and that's proven. And so many people are worried, how are we going to do this? It's not too late. Yes, we're in a pandemic. Yes, a lot of people have lost their jobs. Yes, we're in a huge economic crisis, but it's not too late. And, Prudential believes that one of the best ways to feel empowered and supported is to learn, educate ourselves on our finances, have these conversations, as hard as they may seem. We don't want to seem vulnerable and say, at our dinner table or out with some friends or colleagues, "Oh my God, I have nothing saved in the bank." Nobody wants to say that, right? Because everyone's going to turn to you and be like, "Are you nuts?" Well, maybe the person is nuts, but maybe the person is living check to check. Maybe it's a single mother. Maybe her kids, need this and this and the other thing, and it's hard. But there are experts out there that it doesn't matter how much we're making or how much we're able to save, they can guide us through. And that's when Prudential steps in. And, one of my biggest challenges is technology, right? Having to do my work from home, most of my work from home. I wanted to put some art back here from Prudential.com to kind of walk you through it. And I couldn't figure it out. So I'm still trying to learn.
It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it, because we're going to send all the resources and the information to all our participants, which we had a fantastic turnout. And thank you so much. What you have said, it's very, very important, very inspirational. The chat has been on fire too about your very inspirational stories, Damaris. Thank you so much for your time. We know that's a challenge for us, for Latinos, for small businesses, and but we need to learn to talk about money. We need to talk about money with our children, with our families, with their parents, and to plan for the future. So thank you again. Thank you for being here. And I hope we can invite you some other time to be with us. That would be fantastic. Right?
I would love that. Sería un placer, la verdad que sí. And I want to share the website, www.prudential.com/tu sumas. So prudential.com/tu sumas. Like I said.
Sumas, like you
sumas. Yeah, like you add. We all add, and they're going to add to our lives by enriching us with information, and information is power. Knowledge is power. And so you've got to check prudential.com/tu sumas. That's TUSUMAS.
Very good. Thank you, Damaris. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Gracias
por una fantástica exposición y tu presencia hermosa.
Gracias. Invito a todos que me sigan en las redes.
Thank you. Yes, please follow Damaris, follow Latinas in Business. We are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we are on LinkedIn, and we are also on Twitter. So we are moving.